Captain Ibrahim Traoré is an emerging force in African politics, a young leader whose influence is reshaping the balance of power not only in the Sahel region, but across the African continent and increasingly on the global stage. Traoré's rise to prominence is unusual, dramatic, and unprecedented in many ways. He became the president of Burkina Faso through a military coup in 2022, assuming control in the aftermath of two successive coups within the same year. Initially, he had assisted his commanding officer in the first coup, but when he perceived that the leadership was veering off course, he, along with a group of trusted allies, orchestrated the second coup that brought him to power. This extraordinary sequence of events marked the beginning of Traoré's unconventional leadership. At barely 34 years of age, he emerged as a continental sensation, a symbol of youthful energy combined with decisive action. Burkina Faso itself is a landlocked country in the Sahel region of West Africa. A former French colony, the nation has struggled for decades with recurring droughts, political instability, and military coups, achieving independence as Upper Volta in 1960. Yet independence did not bring stability. Burkina Faso has long been at the mercy of both internal weaknesses and external manipulations, leaving it vulnerable to exploitation. From the outset, Traoré recognized that addressing Burkina Faso's chronic instability required redefining the country's relationships with foreign powers. He was dissatisfied with the state of national leadership, particularly in matters of security. As a military officer, he understood that effective governance required a strong, well-equipped army. Yet, despite promises from the French, the military remained underfunded and poorly armed. This failure had real human consequences. Over 1.6 million people were displaced from their homes due to the rise of terrorist groups in the region. French military presence had done little to address these security threats, revealing that external interventions, no matter how well-intentioned, could not substitute for robust local governance. Burkina Faso is rich in mineral resources, including gold, zinc, copper, phosphate, and limestone. Historically, French companies controlled much of this wealth, extracting resources for foreign profit while leaving the local population with minimal benefit. Traoré understood that for his country to succeed, three pillars needed to be established: political stability, economic independence, and military security. Dissatisfied with the state of all three, he acted decisively to extricate Burkina Faso from the lingering influence of France. His actions ignited widespread popular support, with citizens expressing their frustration against neo-colonialism. Anti-French sentiment swept through the Sahel region, echoing similar movements in Mali and Niger. Traoré's approach was bold and unambiguous. As a military officer, his word became law. Foreign personnel were asked to leave, contracts were renegotiated, and the country's mineral wealth was brought under closer national control. While some online reports exaggerate his achievements, claiming he cleared all national debts and seized complete control of the mining sector, there is no doubt he has initiated substantial reforms. Burkina Faso remains indebted to the tune of roughly $10 billion, and foreign nations, including Russia, Canada, and Australia, continue to operate mining projects. Nevertheless, Traoré has established a national mining company and taken steps to assert state oversight over critical gold mines. Beyond mineral wealth, he has sought to rejuvenate key domestic industries. The Kashmir sector, for example, now employs over 1,300 workers, nearly 90% of whom are women, with a majority being young people. Traoré is acutely aware that over 60% of Burkina Faso's population is under 30. He has positioned his administration to provide hope for this generation, aiming to create opportunities, restore shattered dreams, and instill confidence in the country's future. Food security and agricultural self-sufficiency have been central to his vision. Previous governments had neglected these critical areas, but Traoré has actively pursued initiatives to increase employment, provide modern agricultural equipment, and establish agro-processing facilities. 2 tomato processing plants have recently opened, reducing reliance on imports and boosting local production. In 2025, Burkina Faso achieved another milestone, designing and assembling its first fully electric vehicle, the Itower, entirely by local engineers. There are also reports that Traoré has restructured government salaries, slashing top officials' pay by 30% while increasing civil servant wages by 50%. He has reportedly refused a presidential salary, though these claims lack independent verification. Despite persistent unrest, Burkina Faso's economy has shown signs of improvement, with the International Monetary Fund projecting a GDP growth of 5.5%. Traoré has rejected IMF and World Bank loans, criticizing them as instruments of Western influence, and has withdrawn Burkina Faso from the regional economic community ECOWAS alongside Mali and Niger, arguing that these institutions often act as extensions of foreign powers. In many ways, Traoré's leadership draws comparisons to the revolutionary Thomas Sankara, who governed Burkina Faso in the 1980s. Sankara, a young military officer and Pan-Africanist, seized power in 1983 and implemented radical social, economic, and ecological reforms. He renamed the country Burkina Faso, the land of upright people, and personally wrote its national anthem. Traoré's vision mirrors Sankara's commitment to self-determination, anti-imperialism, and citizen-centric governance. Both leaders ascended to power through coups, were young, and challenged the entrenched foreign exploitation of their nation's resources. Traoré's bold initiatives have not gone unchallenged. There have been nearly 30 assassination attempts against him, and numerous plots to overthrow his government have been uncovered. In March 2025, Human Rights Watch reported the arrest of 3 journalists covering media suppression, raising concerns about press freedom under his administration. While his reforms and anti-colonial stance have garnered widespread acclaim, the situation on the ground remains complex. Reports of violent clashes, civilian massacres, and ongoing terrorist activity paint a starkly different picture from official narratives. Violence in Burkina Faso has escalated in recent years, with parts of the country under the control of extremist groups. Some regions have become inaccessible, forcing civilians to flee to neighboring countries like the Ivory Coast. Al-Qaeda affiliates and other terrorist organizations have conducted mass killings, often claiming hundreds of victims at a time. Government forces have sometimes been implicated in violence, including the execution of civilians and extrajudicial killings. These realities highlight the challenges of governing a nation amid deep insecurity and the persistence of terrorism throughout the Sahel. Traoré's foreign policy reflects a pragmatic approach to these challenges. His outreach to Russia, including collaboration with President Vladimir Putin, is driven by security considerations. Aligning with Russia allows Burkina Faso access to military support, development financing through institutions such as BRICS, and diplomatic leverage against Western powers critical of his governance style. While some analysts criticize the replacement of French influence with Russian involvement, Traoré's choices reveal a strategic understanding of geopolitics and a determination to preserve Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Yet, questions about democracy and governance persist. Traoré's ascent through a military coup bypassed electoral mandates, raising concerns about the legitimacy and sustainability of his rule. Scheduled elections in July 2024 were postponed due to instability, with Traoré asserting that security and reconstruction took precedence. While many citizens support his administration, the extended tenure of a military-led government without democratic endorsement remains a contentious issue. Observers worry about the potential entrenchment of power and the challenge of eventual transition to civilian rule. In evaluating Traoré's leadership, one must consider the extraordinary conditions in which he governs. Security threats, economic challenges, and entrenched external influence all demand decisive action. In areas where stability exists, infrastructure projects, schools, and markets are being rebuilt. Traoré's administration is actively trying to balance reform, security, and national development, demonstrating a commitment to long-term change despite ongoing threats. Africa's potential is immense. The continent is rich in human resources, natural wealth, and cultural heritage. Yet, the lack of political will and visionary leadership has historically hindered progress. Nations such as Nigeria, despite vast oil wealth, continue to struggle with energy deficits while exporting resources for foreign profit. Traoré's administration seeks to chart a different course, emphasizing resource sovereignty, youth empowerment, and national self-reliance. The challenges are formidable. Terrorist networks entrenched across the Sahel exploit weak governance and porous borders, requiring coordinated regional and international efforts to address. Meanwhile, economic independence requires strategic management of resources, renegotiation of contracts, and development of industries that benefit citizens first. Traoré has taken bold steps in both arenas, yet success is not guaranteed. Years of consistent effort, structural reforms, and careful navigation of domestic and international pressures will determine the long-term outcomes. Ultimately, Captain Ibrahim Traoré represents a new model of leadership in Africa, one rooted in decisiveness, youth, and a willingness to confront historical and contemporary exploitation. He embodies both the promise and the paradox of revolutionary governance. His vision is ambitious, his reforms daring, and his popularity widespread. Yet the persistence of violence, external pressures, and governance challenges remind us that transformation is neither instantaneous nor without sacrifice. Traoré's story is not just the story of Burkina Faso. It is a reflection of Africa's ongoing struggle for autonomy, dignity, and prosperity. It is the story of a young leader navigating the turbulent waters of geopolitics, national security, and socio-economic reform. It is a story that raises profound questions about leadership, sovereignty, and the future of governance on the continent. As the world watches, Traoré continues to shape his nation according to a vision that is at once revolutionary and pragmatic, combining the lessons of history with the demands of contemporary geopolitics. Whether his tenure will become a model of African renewal or a cautionary tale of the limits of military-led governance remains to be seen. But the impact of his leadership on the people of Burkina Faso, on the Sahel region, and on global perceptions of African agency is undeniable. Burkina Faso, under Traoré, has emerged as a symbol of both hope and complexity. It is a country struggling to secure its borders, to harness its resources, to empower its youth, and to assert its independence on the world stage. Traoré's leadership is a study in contrasts, revolutionary yet pragmatic, popular yet contested, ambitious yet constrained by reality. In the final analysis, Ibrahim Traoré is not merely a leader, he is a phenomenon, a young man whose decisions ripple across a nation and a continent. His tenure forces a reckoning with questions of sovereignty, self-determination, and the pathways toward genuine development in Africa. In a world where African nations have often been defined by external influence, Traoré's bold stance represents a reclamation of agency and an audacious experiment in national renewal. Only time will determine the ultimate success of his vision. Yet one thing is clear. Burkina Faso, under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is no longer a passive participant in its own destiny. It is an active, assertive nation striving to reclaim control of its security, its economy, and its future. And in this struggle, Traoré has become both a symbol and a catalyst, an emblem of the new Africa that dares to define itself on its own terms.